My name is Roger Soares with Archbase Corp here in Japan, and today we're at Shofuen, which is a Japanese vacation cottage that's been restored. And today I'm going to be introducing you to Japanese Soseki-kiso, which is a traditional stone foundation which Japanese architects and builders used a long time ago to help Japanese traditional buildings survive things like typhoons and earthquakes. So today I'm going to be showing you some examples in this building behind me here. And then later on we're going to be headed to the studio. We're going to meet Hiro and we're going to discuss some of the technical details of this Japanese traditional stone foundation. So come with me and let's go check it out. Okay, so here we're looking at the foundation of this Shofuen building. You can see how this post here, this corner post, has been scribed so that it's a perfect example of how traditional Japanese architects would scribe these posts to meet the profile of the stone, and that would allow these posts to not slip off the actual stone foundation, but if there was an earthquake or typhoon, it would allow them to rock a little bit and give. So the goal for Japanese traditional architects and builders was to create these buildings that would flex, kind of like rubber. And you can imagine that each one of these posts is independent, so it's almost like the suspension on a car, where they would move independently like that and giving the building kind of a rubber-like property. Okay, so this is an example here at Shofuen of Japanese Soseki-kiso, traditional stone foundation. So I hope you could get an actual idea of what it looks like in this actual site. But we're going to head back now to the studio. We're going to meet Hiro and we're going to explain some of the technical details about how these traditional stone foundations work. So let's head back to the studio and we'll meet you there. Okay, so we are back here at the studio, and just before we were out looking at examples of Soseki-kiso, which is a Japanese traditional stone foundation. And we've come back to the studio and we're going to explain some of the technical aspects and compare that to slab-on-grade foundations, and just show you what kind of traditional Japanese architects kind of are doing, and explain the reasons why they were doing those things. So Hiro, can you explain slab-on-grade to us?
今の日本家屋の一般的な基礎の部分になります。で、この部分がもうコンクリートになって、その中に W で鉄筋が入っています。それとアンカーボルトが各上がっていて、その基礎のベースとなる下に砕石がこう転がって転圧した上にこれを造形していきます。ここが一応 GL ラインになります。これがもう一般的な日本の、今の基礎で。
So what Hiro's explaining here is he's explaining basically what they're using for modern day houses, which is slab-on-grade foundation. Typically slab-on-grade is used today. And so he's just highlighted the actual slab, the concrete slab, which has, again, you have your rebar, and then you also have your anchor bolts. So he's just highlighting here the anchor bolts and the actual slab itself and the ground line. So Hiro, how does this compare to what we saw back before, the Soseki-kiso? Soseki-kiso と比べたらどんな感じですか？
こちらがもう礎石基礎になります。で、これが自然の石。ここはもう GL ラインになります。で、自然の石を並べて、その下に砂利を敷いて転圧して下がらないように一応固めた上に置いて並べていくような感じ。
So what he's explaining here is that, so modern times we're using the slab on grade, we're actually using a slab of concrete. But traditional Japanese architects use these large stones that were buried in the ground, and below that they had smaller stones to hold that large stone in place. Hiro, その上に何を使ってるんですか？
この自然の石がカーブしたりデコボコなっているのを大工さんがもうきれいにのみで 加工していきます。で、その上に塚を立てて、こうやって形成していきます。
Okay, so here is showing this is quite different than what we see here with this bottom plate. This bottom plate has been anchored to the slab by an anchor bolt. Whereas what he's showing here is actually what they've done is traditional Japanese carpenters, they would cut using a chisel and planer, they would cut the actual bottom of these posts so that they would actually match the top part of the stone, and that would allow the boards to actually the posts to grip the stone without sliding off, but they weren't actually directly attached. つながってないですよね。
ボルトで絶対結束してなくて、ただ乗っかってるだけです。で、この柱を横ずれを防ぐために、ここに木材を入れていきます。こうすることにこれがずれないようにするのと、遊びを持たせてここにくさびっていうのを打ち込んでいきます。
Okay, so they added to make sure that these posts would stay in place. They added this horizontal board here, and to lock it in place and to be able to adjust it and tighten it, they'd add these wedges called kusabi. So they would add these wedges here, and that would hold that in place, and that could be adjusted. And then where is the bottom plate?
そこに土台を乗せていくような感じになります。
Okay, so the actual bottom plate was built above that level, and so this is what the Japanese call again dodai. So the actual structure of the house is going to start from here. Hiro, こういうシステムは何で使っていましたか、ずっと。
日本は、地震、台風とか四季とかあっていろんなもう過酷な環境に立つような建物だったので、自然に地震が来た時にボルトで結束してないから動くムービングと、これで倒壊するのを防ぐつっかいで、だからちょっとゴムみたいな動きをします。
That's really interesting. So what he's explaining is the reason why traditional carpenters and architects used this system was when they first started building wood buildings. They were trying to figure out how could they make them so that they would be able to resist typhoons and earthquakes. And so when they use this system, because the actual posts are sitting and locked onto the stone, they wouldn't slip off. But because they're actually not anchored with an anchor bolt, it gave them enough flexibility, so it acted almost like rubber. And so the actual structure itself wouldn't break. It would actually bend and flex. And what we've done is we've actually made a small model here of what this might look like in the ground. Let me show you on this side. So you can kind of see here, you have these large stones that would be actually buried in the ground. And then you have these smaller stones here. And then you have the large Soseki-kiso here. You have this large stone here, which would be buried in the ground. So all of these here are going to be to hold this large stone in place. And also this is going to allow for any water that's in this area to be able to drain away from the foundation. So this is going to be what you would see basically below a slab on slab and grade foundation. And then here you can see I've used a chisel. Actually, I didn't do a very great job. This is just a kind of model. But you would actually cut and carve this so that it's the shape of this stone. And so that it's not going to slip off. It's actually going to grip. And if I can get a kind of a good picture there, that's kind of what it would look like there. So it would be actually gripping there. And you'd have each of those, each of the posts would be on their own individual stone. So like that, so they wouldn't slide. But if there was an earthquake, they could move a little bit without, and that would allow the structure actually to not break. So this board he's mentioning here is actually this one here. 日本語で何と言いますか、このボード。
足固め。
足固めですね。So この足固め、this is the board that is holding all these posts and keeping them straight. And then, as he mentioned, there's these small wedges these small wedges, which called kusabi, which they can put in there, and that's going to hold it tight, so they can adjust it, hold it tight like that.
もう一つちょっと面白いのがあって、簡単に言うと車みたいな感じ、ここがタイヤで、ここがサスペンションだから地震の時こう動くだから崩れない。車も地震が来ても壊れないでしょ。だから家も壊れない、昔の。だからこういう作りになって、ここはタイヤで、ここはサスペンションで、ここはシャーシーだから絶対壊れない。だから昔の日本の家はとても強い。
Okay, so he's just explaining here, and something we forgot to explain was that when you have slab on grade, everything is tied together with anchor bolts and actually the bottom plate. So you have everything that's moving kind of like this as one unit. If there's an earthquake and any kind of tremor in the ground, whereas with this system here, traditional Japanese foundation, because you have each post, which is its own individual unit and moves independently, that it almost acts like the suspension on a car. So each of these can move up and down, which is another reason why this building has so much flexibility. ヒロ、この建物はとても強いですよね。
そう。
で、一番古いのwood building はどのぐらいですか？
東照宮、奈良にある東照宮がもう千何百年って持ってる。
So some of the oldest wood buildings in the world are Japanese buildings. A lot of them are shrines and temples that are over 1,000 years old. And so you can imagine if they were able to, if this wasn't strong, they wouldn't last that long. So if you were going to build a house, which would you use? もし自分で建ったらどれに使いますか？
Sosekiさんしたいね。
You want to try? Okay. So Hiro thinks that he wants to try to use the Soseki-kiso to build a house. But it's just to give builders an idea of some of the flexibility in design and some of the things I used in the past. So thank you for joining us today. Hiro, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for watching our video today on Japanese Soseki-kiso traditional stone foundations. If you like this video, please click the link below where you can watch another video on a 3-year earthquake study that was done on Japanese traditional stone foundations. I'm sure you'll be surprised by the result, so check it out and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll catch you next time. Bye!